safe streets, vibrant neighborhoods, successful business and commerce. These are things that make a healthy community. We are a diverse community, rural, suburban, urban, a multitude of languages and ethnicities, ages and experiences. We are a collaborative community. Public-private partnerships make us a model community that others want to follow. It is what makes us unique. It is what makes us strong. The employees of Kent County reflect our diversity and seek to serve our communities.
People in this county, in this area, we wrap our arms around each other. We come together to collaborate, to solve problems. We're all working for the good of the whole. And I think that's wonderful. And you can see it. You can see it as you drive around Kent County.
Our impact starts the day a baby is born and a birth certificate is issued, to protecting children from deadly diseases through vaccination, to the public safety and justice provided by law enforcement and the courts, to offering veterans services and caring for the elderly. Every day we work to keep our communities robust.
I think if you are somebody who's interested in serving your community, in building a strong knowledge base and a good group of people to work with, then the county is one of your best employment opportunities out there. It's been completely rewarding in every way I could possibly explain for 26 years, and I feel like I grow every single day still today.
Leading these dedicated employees, our 19-member Board of Commissioners and our County Administrator Controller, along with our elected officials and appointed department directors, placing emphasis on civic involvement, quality housing, vibrant neighborhoods, and strong, solid infrastructure to allow businesses to thrive. Professional, dedicated, collaborative, and innovative.
Behind the scenes, collaboration between foundations, charitable organizations, nonprofits, for-profit businesses, public sector demonstrated through the county, the city of Grand Rapids, the townships, all the cities and the villages in our area. If we don't come together, then we will not have the strength that we have today, and I only hope to build upon that.
Our aim is to make our communities the best they can be. We are involved in exciting development projects, sustainable recycling programs, and creative progressive prevention programming. We partner with elected officials, impacting policy ideas that become great achievements. We seek opportunities to reach out into the community and offer our services to help our residents make Kent County thrive.
Our relationship is solid, both from a staff standpoint at the county level as well as the Board of Commissioners. And they understand what we do and the benefits that we can do for the community, and vice versa. We couldn't do what we do without the help of Kent County.
While most of us are busy running our lives, Kent County's elected officials, administrator controller, and over 1,600 employees are serving the communities where we live our lives, so we can all have a place we are proud to call home. Kent County, its life well run.
Good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, November the 19th, 2015. It's 8:30 a.m. This is our regularly scheduled Board of Commissioner meeting. And I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Vonk. Antor.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Bolter.
Here.
Steck.
Here.
Ponstein. Voorhees.
Present.
Coleman.
Here.
Breeby.
Here.
Sawfeld.
Here.
Mass.
Here.
Vandermolen.
Here.
Hennessy.
Here.
Talent.
Here.
Bulkowski. Shivas.
Here.
Schroll.
Here.
Chair.
Present. I'll now call on Commissioner Vonk for an invocation.
Shall we pray? Our Father in God, we come before you this morning on a dark fall day, but during this time of Thanksgiving, we give thanks for that. We give thanks for over 300 years of celebrating this tradition. We pray that it may continue for another 300 years. In a week, we'll gather with friends and family around a dinner table or in a restaurant to give thanks to you for all your many blessings. We give thanks for friends and family, for children and laughter, for the hurting that we can give a kind word to, for the old that need a hand, for work, for food and shelter, for the farmer who plants his crops and brings the harvest, for memories of friends and family that you have called home, for those that serve this nation in the armed forces, on land, on water, or in the air, or are in a far-off place this morning, or have trained all night here in our country. We ask thy blessing on each and every one, and especially those that are lonely at this time, and for their families as well. We ask thy blessing too upon our police and firefighters, and for the good work they do. And then, Lord, we thank you for this country. We thank you for this county. We thank you for all that help in bringing those good things about. We thank you for all in this room this morning. We ask thy blessing upon each and every family. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're now to item 5, special order of business. And the first item A is a steel case pyramid update. We have Tim Raz. Great to see you, Tim.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning to the rest of the Commission Board. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief update on the current economic development project currently happening at the former Steelcase Pyramid Building in Gaines Township. However, before I go any further with the update, I want to be very clear. There has been much speculation. This project is not a done deal. There are still several hurdles that need to be jumped before we can welcome this company to West Michigan. The company I'm referring to is known as Switch. The company is based in Reno, Nevada, and is one of the world's largest operators of electronic data centers. The company is currently interested in establishing an eastern U.S. presence to serve their major clients, Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies on the East Coast and Southeast. What I can report at this point are the current project facts. The company has intended and has communicated a 10-year build-out plan. That 10-year build-out plan will eventually include 2 million square feet of build-out on that site. The total investment is also estimated to be nearly $5 billion of capital and personal property investment. There are several partners on the project, one of which is the Right Place. There are representatives from Gaines Township, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and Colliers International representing the building. There have been many questions on how this project came to be, so if I can briefly provide an update on how that happened. The Steelcase Pyramid Building has been vacant since 2010. In late May, it was purchased by real estate developer Roger Norman from Norman Properties. Mr. Norman has partnered with Switch in the past in several projects and recommended at one point that the company look at the pyramid site in which he had acquired as a possible location for his eastern U.S. presence. The project started with a visit from Switch, confidentially, in West Michigan back in October, at the beginning of October. The Right Place and the MEDC met with the company at the time and have been working with them since, providing a variety of details on doing business in Michigan and West Michigan and communicating the value and the assets we have in our region. Where we sit currently, there are 3 legislative bills that have been introduced in Lansing. Those 3 legislative bills are making their way through the process, and depending on the outcome of those, will largely depend on the success of attracting Switch to West Michigan. The question becomes, why is this important? Why is this project important outside of the initial capital investment and the jobs that it brings? Again, beyond the obvious news of a new company coming here, which we all love, this project has the potential to make a dramatic impact on West Michigan's digital infrastructure. We recently passed legislation that will allow us to invest in our physical roads and infrastructure. In this case, we're talking about West Michigan's and Michigan's digital highways, not our physical highways. In addition, this is part of the Right Places strategic plan that we introduced to the board a few years ago regarding our intent in trying to build and strengthen West Michigan's infrastructure. This project will also has the potential to have a huge impact on West Michigan's talent, our ability to retain that high-tech talent that we need in our region, as well as attract new talent to the region. Again, next steps going forward, there are 3 bills currently in the House and the Senate in the Michigan legislature, and depending on those, on the outcome of those, we will hopefully welcome the project to West Michigan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Breve.
I'm obviously very excited about this, being that I, have lived in Gaines Township most of my life, and it's the area that I represent. So I'm excited to hear this news, and hope everything comes to fruition. But I'm curious, is there any opposition that you know of that would hinder these bills going through the legislature?
There is much work being done on these bills right now. There's much conversation currently happening. I am not probably at liberty at this point and well informed enough to comment on any specific legislation and any opposition that may be out there.
Commissioner Voorhees.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim, for being here. Thanks for the update. As we've heard kind of both sides, some saying it's all done, some saying it's on its way, and appreciate your update. But I would also inform the rest of the board that we appreciate your input as a member of the John Ball Zoo board as well, and appreciate Right Places involvement in helping that as well. So thanks for the report.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is really exciting news, and hopefully it'll come to fruition. One of the things I really liked about is the business model, or the hiring practice of Switch, where they hire a lot of veterans. That's a huge component of what they do. And I'm wondering if you're going to lean on that a little bit for a little bit more leverage, like with the VA and so forth, so we get a little bit more clout coming in. If we need some political leverage, it seems like that would be a good place to start. So
It is certainly a good thing that what Switch is doing. They have actually committed to 70% of their entire workforce being from veterans. So anything we can do to help that and to encourage that here, when, I will not say if, when they come to West Michigan, we will certainly do that. As far as was mentioned with the legislation, that will have certainly an impact. I don't know what that impact will be, and it's certainly not our place to do that. So.
Thank you.
But,
Commissioner Vandermolen.
Thank you. Tim, is there anything we can do as a legislative body to help that process and some of our other counties around there? Is there anything through our influence in the legislature, is anything we can do or need to do?
What I can say definitively is that these 3 bills, if they are not passed in some way, shape, or form, we will lose this project. So that is how critical these 3 bills are. So essentially, it's up to us at this point. So anything this Board of Commissioners can do to help forward that conversation and ensure that those 3 bills are addressed will certainly help the outcome of this project.
Just a follow-up, Dan. Perhaps you could send a letter on our behalf, and I'd be glad to offer a resolution that would encourage that, if that's necessary, that we could send to the whole world if we need to.
I think that's certainly something we need to consider, but we have to look at the upside and the downside. So there is a potential downside financially for the county, because it would be a tax abatement that they're looking for that would affect some of our revenues. But I agree. I think it's a great project, and
Okay.
we certainly could take a look at doing that. Commissioner Steck.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Are you able to address the significant difference between the legislation that's being considered and the old mega credits that were so problematic at the state?
Between these 3 legislative bills and the mega credits, it's really an apples and oranges comparison, so it's really hard to compare the two. The 3 bills that are being proposed right now the first bill pertains to a sales tax, and the elimination or the exemption of sales tax for data center companies that provide data center services as their primary source of business. The second piece of legislation is regarding use tax to sales use tax. It is an exemption of use tax, again, specifically designed for large data centers in which that is their primary source of business. The third piece of legislation going through pertains to property, again, an exemption of property taxes. Again, narrowly defined only to large data centers in which that's their primary source of business.
As a follow-up, again, these are not unique to this specific company, either they're to the entire type of industry and business that's represented.
The current legislative bills that have been introduced, they reference the data center industry as a whole. I should note that there are 18 other states currently in the U.S. that do have similar, and I call them tax policies. We don't refer to them as economic incentives. Our economic incentives come through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. This would be a change in tax policy. It would be written into law. So these same tax policies do exist in 18 other states in our country.
Thank you. Anything else? Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. Apologize for my tardiness. Do you have those bill numbers?
I do. There are actually 6 of them, 3 on the House, 3 on the Senate. They are identical bills, though, so I will only provide the Senate numbers if that's okay. Senate Bill SB 0616, which is the use tax exemption. SB 0617, which is the sales tax exemption. And SB 0618, which is the property tax exemption. And as I said, they're identical on both sides of the aisle.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Great. Anything else? Right. Thank you very much for your presentation, Tim. Appreciate it, and all your work as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We will now move to item 5B, Grand Valley Metro Council River Restoration and Regional Impact. Wendy, Ogilvie. Good morning.
This down a little bit. Thank you, Chair, for having me, and for Daryl inviting me to this meeting, and thank you for all being here. I'm going to talk about the Grand River Revitalization Project, give you some updates and a little bit of history and some updates to the project overall. So it started, probably some of you have seen this type of presentation before, but it started with the Green Grand Rapids, which was an initiative to update the master plan for Grand Rapids and incorporate green infrastructure into some of their policies. And from that, what that was included was let's activate the river. Let's try to do something with the river instead of turning our backs to it. So from that created some local champions, and the Grand Rapids Whitewater were sort of 2 guys that decided they wanted to see rapids in the river. So they came together, and a 501c3 was formed, and they were able to hire an engineer out of Colorado who was a river restoration engineer, being able to look at the whole river system. And so we have multiple partners now with the City of Grand Rapids, Metro Council, and one of the bigger partnerships that we were able to have, the Urban Waters Federal Partnership was designated this site, just Grand Rapids project, as the Urban Waters Federal Partnership location. There's only 19 other locations in the nation, and so this was an initiative of the federal governments to have 14 federal agencies come together, talk to each other, and work on one project together. So, which doesn't happen very often, but just getting them in the same room, leveraging some of their resources to really focus on how they can move a project like this forward. So people in Grand Rapids have been asking for a long time, why are we called Grand Rapids? Where are the rapids? And so there are no photographs of the rapids. They've been drowned out and sort of disappeared from our landscape for a long time. But they imagine that they looked something like St. Mary's Rapids up by the Sioux on the St. Mary's River. So there's a lot of architecture and a lot of representation of the river and the waves in our community. So how do we get that back into the river? This is an old diagram of Grand Rapids. It's called the Village of Kent. It wasn't built this way. It wasn't called that. But this was just sort of one of the earliest depictions of what the rapids could have looked like. And it's one of my favorite quotes of, "Before the river was changed by the work of man, the rapids had a nearly uniform descent for about a mile, sufficient to give a decided turbulent and wild appearance to the waters and to make a noise that broke the stillness of the forest and echoed from the neighboring hills." So it was over a mile of some pretty significant rapids that were really part of this community. So what happened to them? Where are they? Back in 1868, as you can see from this picture here, the dam is already in place. And one of the original reasons that we think the dam was there was to float the logs down the river. You know, all of this area was heavily logged, and when they floated the logs down, they would get hung up on the rapids. So they needed to drown those rapids out and then divert those logs into the canals that were then shipped to the factories for the furniture. It was, you know, a big part of this, the history of this city. So way back then, and then when they did create that dam, they were able to further manipulate the river and actually create the river about half the width right now of what it originally was, and excavate a lot of that bedrock out of the bottom of the river. And if you look at some of the buildings downtown, their foundations are actually built on the limestone that was excavated out of the river here. St. Mark's Church is one of the most visible ones. So a lot of the original habitat of the river was taken out, and then also then they had to manipulate it a little bit more with the flood walls. And this is from 1908. And this flood wall actually still exists. It's right on Wealthy, and where the S curve is. You can actually see this one. So there's a lot of modifications that have been done to the river, and its use has been really varied throughout its history, through the furniture factory and a lot of the mills that were along the river. So one of the first questions, though, we had with this project was, who owns the dam? It's never been inspected, ever. The city thought the Michigan Department of Natural Resources owned it. They thought the city owned it, and so one of our first efforts was to figure out who owned the dam. Back in 1927, the city did hold a contract to improve or repair part of the dam, and it was to make this concrete cap that you see today on the dam. And so now, since the city held the contracts and did that, then everyone said, well, you must own the dam. So now that's kind of how they determined the city owns the dam. But when they built this in 1927, it caused the rest of the river downstream to kind of dry up and expose the river bottom. And back then, they used the river mainly as a sewer, and so it didn't smell very good. And you can imagine in the summer months when it was kind of a dry riverbed with sewage in it, it really didn't. It wasn't very nice. So they then proceeded to build another 4 what they called beautification dams along the river, which you can still see most of them today. And that was really just to hold the water back, to cover up the bottom surface so it didn't smell so much. But again, with the city working to separate all of their combined sewers, and we obviously have a much better sanitary system now, it doesn't have those issues, so the dams really aren't serving that purpose anymore. So we needed to find out more about the river. We really didn't know a lot about the river, and one of the things that the engineer found from Colorado was doing a survey of the river bottom. We really didn't know much about the river bottom. And what they found was that from Ann Street, just sort of north of the city, down to Fulton Street, it's about a 2-mile stretch, but there was an 18-foot fall just in that 2 miles. And if you go from Fulton Street another 40 miles down to Lake Michigan, it only falls 4 feet. So it's a very significant drop that's right here, right in the urban center, of the city, which is very unique. You just you can't go to the Kalamazoo River and put back the rapids because they aren't there. You don't have that sort of geology. And this is what created that kind of a relatively rare geologic formation. If you can see the red ring around there, that's Bayport limestone, and that's a lot of what they excavated out of the river. But where the Bayport limestone meets kind of the Michigan Formation, that geologic feature is what causes the rapids right there. So it is kind of a rare occurrence to have that happen in this state. So what that geology is really the bedrock that exists behind the dam right now that are the original rapids. But they also think that this was the original spawning ground for sturgeon, which were a very significant fish in the city's history. So one of the things with this, there's about 88 acres of this natural rapids that's behind the dam right now. There's been a project over on the east side of the state where they've tried to recreate and build this type of habitat, and it's been about $1 million an acre to build this habitat to bring some of the sturgeon back. So, I mean, here we have 88, and it's there. You don't have to really spend that money to do that. As I said, the dam has never been inspected, so we really needed to figure out, what's its condition. It's almost 100 years old now. They definitely have, a lifespan. So there have been indications that it's nearing its end of life. So, now is a good time to address it. But one of the main things with the big 6th Street Dam and also the smaller Lowhead dams is that they're very dangerous. And you've probably read about almost every year there's a death or some accident at the dams. And because of the way it's configured, it just causes a hydraulic sort of whirlpool at the base of the dam. And they call them the boils. If you go down there, and you can see that rotating. And if you do get caught in that, it's very, very difficult to get out. So if we're encouraging people to get in the river, we need to make sure it's safe. And so this is one of the big factors of this whole project is the safety. One of the other discoveries that we had early on, people were saying, well, you can't take the dam out because there's tons of contaminated sediments behind the dam, and if you do that, you'll kill all life in Lake Michigan, so you can't touch that. So they thought we better discover that and see what was behind there. So they hired some engineers, and they did go take samples of the sediment, but they actually could not find much sediment at all. All they kept hitting was bedrock. The sediment that they did find, the only elevated element was arsenic, and that's pretty common in almost every river in the Lower Peninsula today. So kind of dispelled that urban myth of all these contaminated sediments behind the dam. So that really helped expand the project to be able to look at the possibilities of modifying the dam and looking upstream. And one of the big reasons for removing that is to reconnect the river, to remove that barrier and reconnect the native species to the rest of the river. And these were the sturgeon that used to exist. Some of the other stories are that they were so thick in the river that you could walk across the backs of them. But they are very, very full of oil, and so they used to hang them up like this and stack them up and use them just as cordwood, and they would fuel their boats with the sturgeon. I've also recently learned that sometimes sturgeon can have up to 40 pounds of roe, which are their eggs inside of them, which was a very, very prized caviar that was actually exported to Russia from some of these sturgeons. So they had a very, very important, but then they became a nuisance. They were so thick they became a nuisance, over-harvested, so now they are a state-threatened species. But that's one of the museum, our public museum actually got 2 baby sturgeon that are there now up on the 3rd floor. You can go see them swimming around, which is very, very, very cool. So, and sturgeon are very specific to their own river system. So the DNA of the sturgeon, you can't rear sturgeon in the Muskegon River and have them thrive in the Grand River. They're very specific to their river system. So that's one of the reasons there's never been a program to encourage sturgeon here, because we just haven't had the habitat in this river. So they are state threatened, so if you do catch one, because they are in the river, put it back. Don't take it.
I'll do that next time.
One of the other discoveries was because the river has improved in water quality, this, besides being the furniture capital of the world, this used to be the button capital of the world because we have one of the largest clam and mussel populations in North America. And so they used to harvest the clams and punch buttons out of their shells. And so, again, they were over-harvested, and the snuffbox mussel is a federally endangered species. And so the good news is that they found some, because that means water quality is improving and that there's a possibility that they could be restored. The challenge is that it sort of elevates you to a whole nother level of permitting and many more years of mitigation and relocation plans that we have to have for these mussels. But what this river, the modified river, the changes in the river will change the flows and the oxygen levels and the velocities and all of that in the river, which creates that needed habitat for the snuffbox mussel. Because right now it's a pretty straight, flat system. This is just really quick, but the snuffbox mussel The only way they can reproduce is to have the presence of log perch, because log perch come and flip rocks to find the insects, and so they think this mussel is a rock. They flip it up looking for insects, and the mussel then grabs a hold of the log perch and shoots its eggs into the gills of the log perch. And while they're doing that, so all the eggs are going into the fish, and then the fish will swim upstream and deposit the eggs farther upstream. So you need to have all of these different habitats working together in this river system. So that's a little biology.
There's a Facebook moment for you. I just learned about snuff box reduction.
So downstream, this is where the boulders and 47 acres of these boulders and substrate would be able to be restored and provide that habitat for all of the. And one of the challenges is because it's a federally endangered species, we have to get an incidental take permit, which means it's a permit for how many you can kill basically during your project. And in order to comply with that permit, we're probably going to have to go into the river, locate 60,000 mussels, not snuffbox, but all the other mussels, find them, locate them to a suitable habitat, but also another 63,000 upstream of the dam. So it's going to be a huge community effort of relocating mussels to another location and then bringing them back and having them survive. So stay tuned with that, because we need, I think, a lot of help to do that. So as I said, the dam was kind of a barrier to the connectivity of the river, but it's also a barrier to the invasive species that we have in the river system, which are the lamprey. And so another challenge of the project has been, how do we allow the good fish to get up while maintaining that barrier for the lamprey, because we certainly don't want to infest the entire Grand River watershed with lamprey. They're not very desirable species. So they're looking at building another barrier, but it would be an adjustable barrier, and it would be placed above where the rapids, the start of the rapids are, so sort of where that, just south of Ann Street, where the railroad trestle goes over there. But it would be an adjustable barrier so that it would be able to be raised up during the lamprey migration, but then put down to maintain the regular river flows when they're not moving through the river. So, and that would be at a level where it just would maintain the natural run of the river. So this is kind of just conceptual of whether it's a bladder that inflates to raise it, or whether there's steel gates or something. We're working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to create the design. And they are really looking at this project as being a model for other examples of doing this type of river management in the whole country. This just hasn't been done before, so it's a very unique project in that aspect. Another component of that, and maybe a benefit of the adjustable barrier, would be to maintain that rowing pool that we have, which is also a very unique environment that we have in the city. We had a national Masters National rowing event last summer, and with a little bit of modification, being able to moderate some of those flows and depths of the river, it could be approved to an international rowing venue. And a lot of the rowers that were here last summer just said, this is really unusual. I can walk to my hotel. That never happens in these rowing events. They're usually out in the middle of nowhere, and just having it in an urban setting and the benefits to our community from having such a big event like that. So as I said, we kind of started looking at the 6th Street Dam and downstream of what we could do in the river to provide habitat and improve the river. With all the discoveries that we made, able to expand the project now from upstream and downstream, from Lamoureux Park maybe down to Millennium Park. But now we're really looking at this as a regional project, and it's being looked at as a regional draw with some of the economics that we've looked at for the project. These are just the overall project goals of restoring the river, enhancing access for everyone, improving the habitat and connectivity, and then the economic opportunities that are available, not just for in the river itself, but all of the sort of spin-off opportunities. So kind of an update where we are. In July 2014, the City Commission endorsed the plan and appointed a Grand River Steering Committee, which several of you were on that committee. And then also, that's where GR Forward was kind of launched at that point. In July 2015, the City Commission accepted the Grand River Steering Committee's final report, and that included water quality recommendations and a lot of other components to the entire project. And then just last week, a couple weeks ago, the City Commission authorized the city engineer to be able to sign the permits when they're ready to be submitted. So it was just kind of an approval for moving forward and having the city engineer sign those permits. So the way it sort of interacts with the GR Forward, probably a lot of you have seen this, but river restoration is just moving alongside these other initiatives in the city and in the region, hopefully all coming in to sort of the same common goal, and that's kind of where we are now with the GR Forward plan being in the process of being approved. So part of it is just looking at bringing the people in the region back to the river. How do they access the river? How can we make it more part of our bigger community? And then how do we get there, looking at the different strategies to do that, and investing in our public spaces, and especially the spaces along the river. And this is where I've been going out to communities upstream and downstream, just trying to explain how the whole connections, whether it's a water connection, a trail connection, some of the bike trails we have, some of the hiking trails we have, but there's a lot of connections that can happen. The state, actually, the DNR right now is looking at a water trail, so creating this sort of formalized trail from Portland to Grand Haven for people just to be able to, that's a mode of travel. They know where to get off, where to stay, what the facilities are and amenities might be throughout the whole system. So the we did commission a economic impact study, and knowing that outdoor recreation is a big part of our sort of national economy. But for this area, they looked at just the recreation would bring in $15 to $19 million annually back to this area, just with the recreation part of it. So that's not including any of the businesses and any of the other spin-offs that might happen. This was part of GR Forwards, but just the re-envisioning of the river corridor, of turning a lot of the, like right now, industrial uses that are along the river into some green space, into improved access spaces. So this is where the 6th Street Dam is right now, but looking at improving some of these parks, looking at creating that white water where we also have the fish passage on the right, and then just moving upstream and continuing to green some of these areas as we move forward. So we're looking to submit permits early 2016. The river was part of the HUD Disaster Resiliency Grant that the county just submitted with the city. We're waiting to hear on that. The Grand Rapids Whitewater has just hired Canary Consultants to do a formal fundraising effort starting in 2016, with all hopes, all of that coming together in a timely manner to be able to start construction in the river in the spring of 2017. A lot of things having to come together to make that happen, but that's the plan.
Great.
So,
thank you very much for your
questions?
update. And
Sure.
little history lesson, a little
Yep.
biology.
Biology.
Good stuff. So, questions today, Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair. This was fabulous. There were pieces of this that we've heard back and forth, and this was a wonderful summary, historical, up-to-date. I was curious about the plan on the fundraising. What is the estimates that you're looking, where is the funding sources coming from?
Good question. We've always looked at it as sort of a third federal, a third from the state, and a third from local. And right now, there's been about $6 million secured from local funding. The federal funding, we're working with a few federal agencies. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has provided some initial grants, but maybe that HUD grant would provide some of that financial assistance as well. Still kind of waiting to hear how the state is maybe participating.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Antor.
Thank you, Chair. I was just curious on what's the projected, I know the number keeps changing as this evolves because of just the way
Total project?
Correct. What's the total project number as of today?
For the river itself, which we call the wet part of the project, is $34 million.
34 million?
34 million.
And then the city would be on the hook for a third of that, or?
Not the city. The city has not contributed any, and it's really looking at the local foundations.
Local foundations. And then the lamprey issue is something the DNR's got great concerns about. And I know lampreys, they do migrate, but they have resident populations that don't go anywhere. So what keeps them out when the dam is low? And the lampreys haven't all left. I mean,
Right. It's really, they do treat, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service kind of has authority over the lamprey issue. They work with the DNR, but the DNR does treat with lampricide already below the dam. So they know that, there's no other barrier below this. But the main concern is having them migrate to the rest of the river system. So they're really, really weak swimmers, and so velocity of the water can often hold them back. And so when they're not migrating, they do just sort of stay there. They don't swim.
okay, just one more quick question. As far as the boring samples, they were done on the north side of the dam, correct?
Upstream.
Have they done any to the south? Because it seemed, I don't know, I mean, I'm thinking back historically, it seems like most of the dumping was taking place south of the dam.
It's the fact that there's really no sediment above the dam now. I mean, the river is not very deep. It's a very shallow system, and with the floods that we get and the ice movement that we have, I mean, almost everything is flushed down. So it's probably mostly at the mouth of the Grand River right now.
I would expect most of it to be south of the dam, because that's where the dumping was occurring historically.
Right.
And then I didn't notice any.
Just as far as contaminated sediments there?
Correct. And I had heard some things about creosote. It didn't show up on your graph, but I had heard independent samples that showed a lot of creosote, up to 4 feet in the spot.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I was just wondering. Okay.
I don't know. I can ask more about that.
Yeah, I'm
we
kind of
haven't done
curious about
sampling down
Okay,
there.
thank you very much.
Yes, sure.
Commissioner Vandermolen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard the word regionalization. And so my question is, have you considered, or is anybody going to consider doing something downstream from this whole thing? I.e., open the Grand River to some sort of boat traffic all the way from here to Lake Michigan?
Well, do you mean like commercial boat traffic or just recreational?
Something more than a kayak.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's, we have a river, the Grand Lady, that goes up and down, taking people on tours along the river, and Ottawa County Parks has already established a water trail, so you can go to one of their access sites, and there's signs of where you can get out, where the nearest points are, and so they have some universal access sites, and they also have boat ramps. So already downstream, a lot of boats put in at Johnson Park right now, and some of the smaller boats get up to close to the dam right now.
So if we had a little more access on the Grand River, that could be just a huge economic
And that's
engine
part of
that
right.
somebody ought to, at least someplace down the road, consider doing that.
Thank you. Commissioner Polkowski.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Back when we had a daily newspaper, they used to report that the great work we did in the city of Grand Rapids with the combined sewer overflow, that there still was a pretty significant amount of sewage entering the river upstream in Lansing and East Lansing. How is that being taken into consideration, or have they solved their combined sewer issue?
They have not. They're under consent order to do that. They haven't really started. They have plans to do it. So we're just hoping there's a little peer pressure to move it forward a little bit quicker. But that is the next upstream location where there are still combined sewers and sewer overflows.
Thank you.
It's, about 70 miles or so. So it still has issues. I mean, it still does contribute to our water quality, but certainly having the cleaner here is more important right here.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Mass.
Thank you, Chair. This is part of the grant strategy that's been submitted to the HUD Resiliency Grant. So basically what you're saying is this is going to go forward even if the grant strategy application is not approved. Is that what I hear you saying?
if someone else comes up with that, if we can get another third federal money from
Yes,
somewhere
okay.
else. But, I mean, we're still, it can't go forward until the funding is there. So if the HUD funding does come through, then it would certainly be able to be implemented according to our schedule. But if not, we'll still be doing a lot of fundraising.
But we'd still need 244 million or something for the whole grant strategy of local sources. I think that's what the grant is calling for.
That's a lot more than the river.
Well, yes, that's right. It's the
Okay.
whole 65 projects that are in that whole application. So this is one of the 65 projects. I'm looking at Wayman, I think, is our.
But this was a project that started, Commissioner, before we had the grant strategy
Right,
and
that's
the
correct.
grant
That's correct,
opportunity.
yeah.
So this is that's just one possible funding source.
Right, so
for a portion of the money.
investigating lots of different possibilities.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I guess the question that Commissioner Vandermolen started to ask about was economic impact. Has that been studied, and are there any predictions on what that might be?
Well, they did do a, Anderson group did the economic impact study, and it was 15 to 19 million annually returned just on recreational aspects of it. So it's a pretty good return, for the cost of the project right now. They haven't followed that up with sort of a full-blown economic analysis with, some of the businesses that might start up or the events that could be held and all of that. But
Right.
so it's still, and we've looked at different projects around the country and some of the economic impact that these types of projects have had, and it's always been a very positive impact.
Great. Thank you very much for your report and your work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll move to item 6 on our agenda, public comment. If anyone from the public would like to address this body, please step to the podium, name and address, please, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Paul Mayhew, and I live at 244 Heritage Commons.
Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. And I come today to, first of all, to compliment the board. I was on this board a few years, just the other day. And let me speed up, too. I was on this board a few years ago, and one of the things that we did back then is we saw something that was wrong, and we did it together as a board. It was a bipartisan, we did a lot of bipartisan efforts. What I'm saying here is that when we saw that the police department, the court, and the prosecutor didn't look good to the public, we sat down and said, even if it looks like it's improper, then we got to do something about it. So we sat down and we grappled with that particular issue. And ultimately, we separated the prosecutor's office, the police department, and the courts. So now to the public, even if there is impropriety, it doesn't look like impropriety in there. So that's what we did. We also looked at the jail situation and says, when there's a rash of suicides, who says, it's a lot of suicides going on. And so we again came together on a bipartisan basis and said, let's fix that. So we put together a little small committee, Harold remembers that, and we we created a jail diversions program. Now, I didn't know that this program was number one in the country at some point, and so the sheriff is back there. So it's a great program that we did on a bipartisan basis. So I'm talking about bipartisanship. Right now, before us, we have a situation where there's 2 bills in the House, House Bill 4406 and House Bill 4407. And Channel 8 on April 27th, 2015, ran a story on people of color being underrepresented in West Michigan juries. And so I'm saying this to us because of the potential for bipartisanship. And I'm just going to read a couple excerpts from here. We're in this, those bills, basically, the basic part to me is that they seek to codify in the zip code areas the way that the people are selected for the jury selection. So if we codify it in the zip code areas, which is the most minute political jurisdiction that we have in this county, or in any county, then we'll be able to reach in and get the minorities and Hispanics and stuff like that to serve on the jury pool. We, in our infinite thinking, as a county board of commissioners, when that issue came to us, we again exercised bipartisanship. And when Wayne Bentley stood out in front of the courthouse and said the jury system is messed up, we, through bipartisanship, implemented the ZIP plus 4 plan. Now, the ZIP plus 4 plan worked for a long time, but then all of a sudden it disappeared. But we, through bipartisanship, on this board, implemented the ZIP plus 4 plan. And some of you might not know what that is, but just kind of ask some of the older commissioners, and they might be able to look it up. So let me move on, because I ain't got but 5 minutes. But anyway, we talked to, so based on the census data in Kent County, the African American and Latino population each make up 10% of the community. However, the court data shows only 6% of prospective jurors are African American, 3.9 were Latinos. Now, that's a pretty big discrepancy right there. And then I talked to Judge Johnston about this. And Judge Johnston...
You have 1 minute, Paul.
I got 1 minute? Okay. Judge Johnston agrees with what we're talking. He says, it is somewhat disappointing, Johnson said, you'd like to be as broadly represented as possible. And while I'm not looking for a precise statistical equivalence on juries as we have in the community, I'd sure like to be somewhat in that neighborhood. Also, Governor Snyder chimed in on this. So you can find, I'll leave this, well, I wrote on this here, but you can pull this report from Channel 8, April 27th. They give you a lot of information on this. And so, again, I just want to talk to us and thank us for the bipartisanship that we've showed. I enjoyed working across party lines. A lot of people didn't think that I could do that, but I've enjoyed working across party lines and hope that we could do this on this, because down there in Lansing, these bills are sitting there in the Judiciary Committee and ain't moved because we need a few elephants to swing their trunks.
Thank you, Paul.
Swing their trunks. I don't know about that.
Anyone else like to address this board? Name and address, and up to 5 minutes. Good morning.
Morning. My name's Frank Lynn. I used to be with United Growth of Kent County. I guess now I'm just a citizen. I live at 3446 Devon Northeast, which is in Grand Rapids Township. This morning you're receiving an agribusiness report, and I'd like to speak to that issue. Agribusiness is very important to our economy, as your report points out. It's also important to the culture of Kent County and the lifestyle in Kent County. I came here almost 40 years ago now from San Francisco, which isn't a bad place, and I didn't plan on staying for very long. My wife is from here, and I told her I'd check out this as a place to live. But I was only going to stay for a couple of years and move back to San Francisco. But the fact of the matter is, I've grown to love, and this is my community. It's a much better place than the Bay Area really is. It reminds me of San Francisco when I was a youth. There's, 5 minutes and I can be out on the Fruit Ridge or in Virgins Township and out hiking and whatever. You can't do that in the Bay Area anymore. So the fact of the matter is we have to preserve the lifestyle here in Kent County. And I hope as you receive this report, you'll take some time in the near future to review it carefully and ensure that agribusiness is preserved and that we preserve the lifestyle we have here in Kent County. Now, the fact of the matter is if you're going to preserve agribusiness, you're going to have to preserve farmland. And without farmland, there really is no agribusiness. But without farmland, we also lose the great lifestyle we have here in Kent County. So I want to encourage you to receive this report, but in the future go forward and look at this report and implement some strategies that ensure that we're able to maintain the farmland that we have and the great lifestyle that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. We'll now move to item number 7, our consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Nancy. I didn't see you coming forward.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Nielsen, 14130 Keller Northeast. It's in Cedar Springs mailing address, but it's located in Spencer Township. Needless to say, I am the chairman of the Senior Millage Evaluation Committee, and needless to say, I am here in support of the first item in your 8th agenda item, our recommendations for the senior millage allocations for 2016. We're asking you to approve an amount of over $10 million of the taxpayers' money, and that certainly is not chump change. And I'm here to tell you that the recommendations come to you after a very arduous week of deliberations during the month of October, when we met with all the providers and carefully reviewed their requests and what they did with the money in the past, and came up with a very serious set of recommendations. We welcome your questions. I have a contingent here who are prepared to answer any and all questions that you might have about this serious request. I'd also particularly like to acknowledge the work of your fellow colleagues who are a part of this process. Commissioners Hennessy, Jones, and Steck were just invaluable during this year's process. Carol is a veteran of many years. In fact, the decisions have been so onerous that she has shrunk during the years gone by. Stan and Diane were brand new this year, and I can honestly say that I have never seen two rookies that really grab it and run like the two of them did. They did their homework. They had very thoughtful, conscientious, probative questions, and were very much a part of the process. And I certainly can also want to acknowledge the participation of the county executive's office. Ordinarily it's Wayman Britt, but Wayman was called out the entire week this year. And Matt Van Zanten from his office was an excellent substitute. Again, another rookie who surprised me with the level of his participation. So these are well thought out, hard worked on recommendations, and I'll leave it to you to approve it, and I'll thank you in advance, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate your comments and your work over all these years on the senior millage. I remember working with you back 10, 12, 13 years ago, so thank you for your work and your effort as well. Any other comments this morning? All right, seeing nothing, we'll now move to consent agenda, and I'll call on Commissioner Vonk.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move the consent agenda, items A and B.
Support.
Motion and support. Any comments or questions? Seeing nothing, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Vonk.
Yes.
Antor.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Bolter.
Yes.
Steck.
Yes.
Voorhees.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Breevy.
Yes.
Sawfeld.
Yes.
Mast.
Yes.
Vandermolen.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
Talon.
Yes.
Bukowski.
Yes.
Shivas.
Yes.
Schroel.
Yes.
Chair.
Yes, that carries. We'll now move to item 8, resolutions, and I'll call on Commissioner Voorhees.
Thank you, Chair Korndike. I appreciate the opportunity to move Resolution 103 of today's date. It's the senior millage allocation for 2016 from the Administrator's Office, and move adoption.
Support. Motion by Commissioner Voorhees, support by Commissioner Schroel. Questions or comments on this resolution? Commissioner Stack.
Well, I want to say just a couple of things. I certainly support the resolution, but thank you, Nancy, for the kind comments. But I also would say that I am incredibly impressed with the quality and skill of the staff that we have available to us. There's no way this can be done without the work of you folks over there. And I'm also incredibly impressed, the first time around through this, of the depth and quality of organizations that we have in this community. And it's just an incredibly impressive experience to go through and see them one after another go through there. So it's something everybody should do if you have a spare week.
Thank you. Commissioner Hennessy.
This is always an interesting process, and really the mission is very simple in that it is to keep seniors in their homes and to support them in their quality of their life. And it's very simply explained. The prioritizing of how the money is spent and that it's be spent well is along that lines. It is a very good process.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I too enjoyed this process and was so impressed with the quality and the depth of evaluation of every dime that is allocated. In addition, right after this process was done, I took one extra step, connected with Senior Meals on Wheels, went out to Grattan Township and sat with them during one of their Meals on Wheels deliveries. And I encourage everyone here to consider diving in yourself into that level of depth to see how this works and the difference it makes in these people's lives, because it matters. And I was honored to be part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bukowski.
I just need to note my excuse related to Commissioner Steck's invitation to be part of this process, since I'll continue to abstain, since my day job, Disability Advocates, receives funding for 3 services. So thank you for the invitation, but I get to say no. The rest of you can.
Great. Other comments or questions? All right. Seeing nothing, again, thank you very much for the hard work for the commissioners and for Matthew and for everyone involved with the senior millage. We truly appreciate it. And Nancy, you're a hard worker. We appreciate all the work you've done for our community in the last 16 years of this senior millage. With that, I need to disclose too, I'm a volunteer board member of Fair Housing Center of West Michigan who's receiving some of these funds as well, but I still will be voting. So with that, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Vonk?
Yes.
Antor?
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes.
Jones?
Absolutely yes.
Bolter?
Yes.
Steck?
Yes.
Voorhees?
Vote yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Breeby?
Yes.
Soffel?
Yes.
Mass?
Yes.
Vandermolen?
Yes.
Hennessy?
Yes.
Talon?
Yes.
Bukowski?
Abstention.
Shivas?
Yes.
Schroel?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes, that carries. I'll now call on Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move Resolution 104. It's from the Administrator's Office, and it's the 2016 General Appropriation.
Support. Motion by Commissioner Morgan, support by Vice Chair Softfeld. Questions or comments on this resolution? All right, seeing nothing, this is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Vonk?
Yes.
Antor?
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Bolter?
Yes.
Steck?
Yes.
Voorhees?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Breeby?
Yes.
Soffel?
Yes.
Mass?
Yes.
Vandermolen?
Yes.
Hennessy?
Yes.
Talon?
Yes.
Bukowski?
Yes.
Shivas?
Yes.
Schroel?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes, that carries. We're now to item 9, public comment once again. If anyone would like to address this board, you have up to 1 minute. All right, seeing nothing, we'll move to item 10, reports. We have 2 reports that have been sent to me and I have received. So we have new standing rules that sort of change how these reports are received and referred. So the first report, the Judicial Resources Subcommittee report, was received, and I'm referring it to LHR for action on staffing, and also to the Finance Committee for action on the build-out of the new court. Item B, we have received the Agribusiness Community Work Group report, and I am referring that to for a future board meeting for a possible work session in regards to that after we have a little time to read it and understand all the implications that are contained in that report. With that, we'll move to item number, I'm sorry, we'll still do reports. C, open for any other reports. Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, the Grand Rapids DDA met last week in a special session to approve the GR Forward plan. It's one of a number of bodies that have been approving it along the process. All those approvals have been unanimous, and December 15, it goes to the City Commission for approval and adoption as part of the city's master plan. Dovetails very well with the information that we heard this morning, and there's just really cool stuff happening in our community around the river these days.
Great. Thank you for that. Commissioner Bukowski.
Yes, a report that I never make. I'm on the policy committee of the Metro Council related to our metropolitan planning organization, with federal and state transportation dollars. As a quick note, related to the river stuff, MDOT is actually going to be in the river next summer on the 196 bridges. So if you see stuff happening, it has nothing to do with the river restoration. They're going to widen the bridges eventually. And all of that, of course, is contingent on how money comes through based on our recently approved transportation plan in Lansing. I will forward, I don't know if you all are on the Metro Council's email list, but they sent out the formula so you can see how the various jurisdictions that may be within your districts are impacted by that funding as it will slowly ramp up over the next few years. So that's the small report from the policy committee.
Thank you. Other reports? I'm sorry, Commissioner Schwartz.
Okay. A couple quick things. The Community Health Advisory Committee will be meeting this morning still, 11:30 at the Health Department if you'd like to join us. I always advertise we do have free lunch, and we're looking forward to having a good conversation. We've got several items coming up on the table. Our last meeting in August went rather long because we're doing some really important work with the health improvement plans, and we got updates from the different work groups, so we're hoping to kind of increase that conversation as we move forward into next year. And then also from Legislative and Human Resources Committee, we're wrapping up, all the different teams are finishing up their important work with the citizen appointments, and we will have all that hopefully done by the end of this week before the Thanksgiving holiday.
Right. Thank you. Vice Chair Sawfeld.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give a little very brief comment further on the Agribusiness Community Work Group. Please take that home, read it, and we will have an opportunity to look at that in more detail at a future date, probably in the next couple months. And we'll have a presentation by some of the members of the committee probably. It was about 1.5 years in the making, had some very good people on that committee from a wide spectrum of interest as it relates to agribusiness. And I think we did a very nice job of sorting through a lot of issues and trying to contain them in the report. So hopefully you'll take a look at that and answer those questions in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Mass.
On the Veterans Services Advisory Committee, it's been a little bit more than a year ago that the citizens gave us some additional money. We've been spending that prudently and gradually, and the Legislative Committee will be getting a request for bumping up some staffing. We have, every time we bump up staff, because we've done that, we've asked for that a couple of different times, we seem to get more people. So our waiting lines are not going down necessarily. We're serving more people, we're bringing in more money to the county, but we're going to be asking for bumping up the 2 part-time positions that were approved a couple of months ago into full-time positions, so essentially 1 additional full-time equivalent. Going on right now, I think, starting at 9:30, is Carrie is kicking in some longer-term strategic planning. She's asked the whole advisory committee to come there, and I will go there as soon as we're finished here. Kind of looking at how do we move forward beyond this first year and begin to really kind of broaden our services for veterans in the community. So,
great.
Stand by.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Voorhees.
Thank you. I was hoping that everybody saw the message that came out of John Balzou that the Zoo Board did attain a new executive director. Peter De Renzio is from the zoo in Kansas City and comes with high recommendations. He's a graduate of Rockhurst University and was the Director of Operations in Kansas City. And so we're looking forward to the first year when Peter will bring his family. I think it's you'll see just a neat addition of a family to the cultural impact of our community. And Peter, his wife, and 3 children, and will be coming and join our community. So we're looking forward to that.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Commissioner Steckman.
Thank you, Chair. Just give the commissioners a heads up that the state's report on the performance of the Lakeshore Regional Partners will be released probably on November 23. So we have some sense of what it's going to say, but don't know, of course, until it's actually released. So if you have questions on that afterwards, please feel free to give me a call. In the meantime, we continue at the LRP to work on reorganization structures and interviewing for the new CEO. I know that some had suggested that if we lost the last CEO, no one would want that job, and I can tell you we had over 100 applications for this position from people not just in this state, not just in this country, but internationally. So it was kind of a phenomenal group of applications.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your work there. All right, we'll now move into item number 11, Miscellaneous. Commissioner Miscellaneous this morning. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pass along when people in our county have a traumatic event and need help from the Kent County Sheriff Department. It was so refreshing to hear a story that was a great success during a time that was very challenging for this family. They were burglarized, and there were personal items that were thrown out windows and collected by the Grand Rapids Police Department, and the Grand Rapids Police Department collaborated with the Kent County Sheriff in order to make the investigation and this traumatic event for this family end up with a story that was good. And we hear things sometimes that aren't great, and it's nice to have been approached by someone to say, I just want to let you know, as hard as this was, these officers were phenomenal and made things so much better. And rubber meets the road, these things really matter. And I just wanted to share that with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Polkowski.
Real quick, it's going to snow on Saturday, which means the shoveling snow angels are back at it. We are working with, a huge thank you to Jack Stewart and Pat Draper and the emergency response team and what they're doing. A lot of the municipalities are working with us. Going to challenge the city of Granville and Mayor Moss for the title of the best shovelers out there. And then huge thank you to Lisa LaPlante. She snuck back in. She does awesome work getting that messaging out there and connecting to local media. So just take care of your stuff. That's what this is about, so that the snow gets in everybody's way and makes us less things to complain about. And then now I can talk a little bit about the senior millage to simply say, I'll follow up on Commissioner Jones's invitation. Maybe next spring or summer we can build a ramp as a county commission, because that's what we do at Disability Advocates, do the assessment and then work with home repair. It's a great day to help a family and an individual. So look for that invitation when it gets warm again and the snow is gone.
Thank you. Other miscellaneous, Commissioner Hennessy.
This is the day to talk about the leadership within our senior community, especially with the Area Agency on Aging of Western Michigan. And its longtime director, Tom Zawinski, has announced his retirement for next spring. And so a search is underway. And I personally am confident that we will look within. This agency has had 2 directors, Larry Murray and Tom Zawinski, and has a lot of stability, a lot of strong leadership, and I am sure that will continue.
Thank you. Any other miscellaneous? Commissioner Schroll.
On a completely different note, last week I toured a tattoo parlor, which is a really interesting. I'd never done that.
Personal information.
Well, it does seem like it, wouldn't it be? But actually, I'm extending invitation to all of you to go on a tour. I was with the health department, a sanitarian, and also our administrator, Daryl, came with us, and it was a really interesting opportunity to see. Body art facilities have only had to be licensed in Michigan for, like the past 6 years, I think. So there's a lot of new regulations that are constantly coming from the state that the counties have to kind of juggle and figure out how they're going to implement it. What do these regulations even mean? How do we do it? And they have to work with those private entrepreneurs who are actually doing the work. And I was just really impressed with the level of professionalism that I saw from our sanitarian who was there and the relationship that she had with that tattoo parlor, not in a pejorative way, but in a helpful way to make sure that they're doing everything they need to do to keep that license. So if you ever have some time and want to kind of step out of the box a little bit, I encourage you to go on one of those visitations with the sanitarian. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for that. Any other miscellaneous this morning?
But let
Commissioner
me just follow up with her. Mine wasn't nearly as exciting, but I'm taking under my wing to pass through requests by the Department of Health and Human Services to highlight our jail diversion program. And I don't know, I guess I hadn't heard it before, as Paul was saying earlier, that ours was recognized. I think initially when it was started, it was recognized as a highly good program. But they've asked us to sign on to a stepping up initiative that they want to have that's going to be sent on to the National Association of Counties and the National Justice Conference. So I wanted to find out as much as I could about the jail diversion program. So I toured the other day the whole intake system of the jail. I've never had the opportunity to be through there, I guess. So that was quite impressive. Thank you, Sheriff. I think they do it's very open, it's very well run, but then I wanted to key in on how does the jail diversion work in terms of mental health services that are there. They're right there with the inmates coming in, right there with the officers kind of checking them out. So we have a well-run jail, and we have a well-run mental health portion of it, and we want to keep that going. So I'll be bringing back, I think, something either through one of the subcommittees or here, what's called a Stepping Up initiative, continuing that program on and hopefully building on it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anything else? I have two things real quick. First of all, please remember to get your evaluations for Daryl to Sherry by tomorrow, so we can get that completed. And then happy Thanksgiving to everybody next Thursday. Hopefully our Lions can get a little win streak going to make the playoffs.
1%.
Anyway, with that, we'll move to item 12, closed session. I'll call Vice Chair Softfeld.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the Board of Commissioners meet in closed session as permitted by Section 8C of the Michigan Open Meetings Act to discuss strategy and negotiation associated with the negotiation of collective bargaining agreements. This closed session is requested by Kent County.
Support. Thank you. Motion by Vice Chair Softfeld, support by Commissioner Voorhees. This is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Vonk.
Yes.
Antor.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Bolter.
Yes.
Steck.
Yes.
Voorhees.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Reevy.
Yes.
Sawfeld.
Yes.
Mask.
Yes.
Vandermolen.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
Talon. Bulkowski.
Yes.
Shivas.
Yes.
Schroel.
Yes.
Chair.
Yes, we are now in closed session.
I am Kent County. I am Kent County.
I am Kent County.
We are 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 Kent County.
Beya, Kent County. Ami, Kent County.
Somos Kent County.
Mas Ira, Kent County.
We are Kent County.
We are Kent County. We are Kent County. Oh yeah.